All right, everybody's looking great today. Welcome. This is the Global Watch International Call. It is September 30th, 3 p.m. Jerusalem time, and it's day 11, the final day of our Israel tour with Andre Gelbit. And Andre is a messianic prophetic tour guide. And every single day has been amazing. So if you missed any days, it's all recorded on YouTube. But especially, you've got to listen to day 10, which was En-Gedi. You will hear things about En-Gedi and see things that you have never heard or seen before, guaranteed. And it will change the way you look at things. So, Andre, we're so thankful for you. We're so thankful for all the incredible hours that you spent working on this whole presentation. And there are many people who may never get to Israel in person, but who have taken this tour and will be taking the tour digitally. And it's just it's a great. The seeds that you planted are going to keep sprouting new life. And so we just declare God's blessings over you, and that the best days of your life and your ministry are ahead of you and not behind you, in Yeshua's name. Go ahead, take over, Andre.
All right. Praise the Lord. Thank you so much. Such an honor. It was a pleasure. This 10 days was amazing. I am really enjoying this, as you might recognize. I really enjoy sharing these things with people that have hunger and thirst to go deeper with the word, to really try to connect and be able to listen to what the Spirit is saying. And today we are going to visit this final for this particular digital tour final site, and it has to do with Armageddon, the place. The place is in Israel. This place called Megiddo or Tel Megiddo. We will discuss about this, and I think that a very important point about this is that the moment people think Armageddon, or they hear Armageddon, or even the location Tel Megiddo, they for some reason come with this idea of this final battle. And for some reason, we'll discuss this because we always tend to look in the future. When we see a place and we remember, yeah, there's something has to do with this in the future, so we immediately there. Thinking of the future, but it's very significant, especially with this particular site, but in general as well. When we want to understand the future of a place, we have to learn about the past of that place, because in the past we will see, God God exists outside of time, and so certain events or certain locations, they don't really have a limit of just commemorating or signifying just one particular event in time, but if it's a God thing, it's gonna have connection to the past, and then the moment you understand it, how it was, what God has installed there at the beginning, then you perhaps could see what future events this could open up, or what this could be, how things can happen. So we must look at in the past of this site, because this particular location, Tel Megiddo, okay, the mount, this little hill of Megiddo, as Hebrew calls it, this little hill has been a very significant, even from the research point of view, even from archaeological point of view, just for the last, 100 years, as they began to excavate in the late 19th century, and then on into even now once in a while they still have a little dig going on there, but they don't excavate too much, but they've excavated a large part of this particular of this particular archaeological hill. And so we want to understand in the broader picture, and the zoom out and then zoom in again, and then we will see how this plays a part in the end story of the return of Yeshua. And so your questions are more welcomed, and please wait towards the end, because it will be breaking some of the bubbles that in the Christian mindset have built. And I totally believe that God has a message so that we could clear off this fog that we have about the Armageddon idea. What is this? How things going to happen? What is really there and what isn't there? How does the text sees these things? So let's go in. Armageddon, at the crossroads of the ancient world. We have to understand that this location is not just a little place in Israel, but it is a very, very important piece of of the geographical or even ancient world geography. We've already talked about many things that have to do with the global highways of the ancient world, and Megiddo, the site Megiddo, is really connects to it. But first of all, how does Hebrew language connect to this particular place, or what do we understand from Hebrew? Now, the place in the Bible, as you all familiar with, Revelation 16:16, is simply talking to us about a place where the gathering of the nations taking place. Interesting that John in Revelation is actually clarifies and says that the place called in Hebrew Armageddon. In other words, he brings in Hebrew into the picture. It's not a coincidence. He says in Hebrew. He could have said in Greek. He could say, in other languages, but he specifically says in Hebrew. So we have to look at the Hebrew understanding and see what does that really mean, and what can this help us, how this helps us to understand. And so Armageddon is a combination of two words in Hebrew. Har, or har means a mount or a hill, and the word Megiddon or Megiddo. Megiddo, Megiddon, different languages throughout historical comments. There are different versions of this, but it's Megiddo. Okay, Megiddo or Megiddon. That's what we know. So a mount or a hill of what? Megiddon. Now, there are several explanations possible for this word. Okay, it's from the root magad or megid. We know very famous use of this word magid in something what we call the Passover Haggadah, or where the place that tells the story of Passover. Lehagid means to tell a story, to tell. Okay, vehigadata, you have taught, you have told to your children the story of Passover, of Exodus. Okay, Magid. And very often this also in the Bible, we also use in the word Maged or Magedet in connection to Magedet Hatidot, which means foretelling a future, not only telling, but foretelling as well. And so however you want to put it, okay, that it is possible to interpret it as a mountain of storytelling or a mountain of foretelling. I personally tend to more amount of foretelling, and I'll explain to you why I think this can be really, really significant. However, you can argue this, and that's okay. That's why I'm putting a question mark, okay? But I'm presenting an idea, amount of telling a story, amount of foretelling, something that is going to happen. That has to do with some archaeology that have been discovered in this place. So in the Bible, there is only one spot in which this event described, and that's Revelation 16:16. We will look at it in context as we go on. So I hope you have your Bibles open, because we have to go into the scriptures to understand. Now let's go back and understand a little bit of the background, of the geographical overview. What is going on in the ancient world in terms of this particular spot? You can see Megiddo with the red cross over here. You can see where that is. This is the map of the ancient trade routes. What we see marked, colored in green. I love this map. I helped designing this map, by the way. Didn't invent it, of course, but just we redesigned it anyway. But here you can see the green color is what is the ancient world, what's called the fertile crescent. In other words, this kind of shape, okay, of the agricultural land where people have lived in the ancient Near East, in the ancient world. And so here you have again Tigris and Euphrates. We spoke about them. It's in connection to the garden. The two rivers, Mesopotamia, between Potamia, the rivers, between the rivers, Mesopotamia. Here you have a city called Ur of the Chaldeans, okay, from where Abraham have left. You can track the ancient roots. This map specifically talks and shows the ancient roots. Why that is important? Because here on the east, directly on the east of Israel, it's great desert. There are almost no roads there. It's very difficult to go, but the caravans and the people have traveled throughout the ancient routes. Here, look at the ancient road, goes through here, through Mari, which is part here, and the ancient road of Syria, and then Iraq, Mari, and then here you have Hamat, which is the region of Turkey, already post-Lebanon, Damascus, Syria, up into Aleppo as well, and then this whole region of Assyria, Ashur, Nineveh. You can see all of the Midian, Elam, Susa, that you know from this book of Esther. And these routes, they kind of all go through this narrow passage, that narrow passage here called Canaan. This narrow passage here called Canaan. There are two highways, the King Highway, the Via Regis, that goes on the east side of the Jordan River and goes down to Eilat, and a Via Maris that goes right in the middle of Canaan and continues on into Egypt. So Egypt is a great empire. Mesopotamia is a great empire. Between these two great empires of the ancient world were trade routes, and the trade routes are going through a narrow passage because of the desert on the east, the narrow passage on the coast called Canaan. And you see what happens is that if you are a king of one of these two great empires, you want to control, right? You want to control the world. You want to control the whole system of the world. How is the ancient world here? How does this world communicate? Through the caravans, through the trade routes. So trade dictates the situation, right? And so if you want to control the world in their perspective, what you need is simply get a hold of the trade routes. If you can dictate the taxation, you can dictate the trade routes, then you are the king of the world. And that is exactly what's happening. The Mesopotamia, land of Mesopotamia, the Assyrians, they fight to control Canaan. Egyptians are fighting to control Canaan. That's why the Bible tells us every single time a king of Egypt came and took over Canaan, a king of Assyria, a kings of Elam, all of the battle is pretty much between the two empires, but the battleground is Canaan, because whoever controls that little narrow passage called Canaan controls the world. I'm not sure if Abraham had understood this when God called him out of Ur of the Chaldeans, and he called him all the way to the land of Canaan. I don't know if he understood the significance of that little piece of land in the ancient world. Whether he did or didn't, I know God did. And so God is putting Abram there in order to display the presence of God. Why in this particular piece of land? Because this is the gate of the world. They're all going through it. If something is being displayed in that piece of land, something is going on in that piece of land, all of the world, both of the great empires will be influenced by, they will be aware of what's happening. So this is amazing how God decides to establish his presence on the earth in that little piece of land that, from the garden, even from then, but later on will become the center of the ancient world, even with the trade routes. And think about nowadays, it is still the center. So the trade routes are actually going through the center of the land of Canaan, and they all meet at the place called Megiddo. It's very significant. Here, if we're going to go zoom in here, we will understand what I'm talking about. If you think this is, by the way, Google Maps, Google Earth, you could see here's Megiddo, here's the Red Cross, same place. Look at this great intersection of crossroads. There is no other intersection of crossroads that is that great in the ancient world. I'm absolutely serious. Look at the roads that come into this place. There is a road that leads up along the coast toward Tyre, Lebanon. Okay, there's a road from here. This is, by the way, the Great Valley, the Great Jezreel Valley. A road that crosses right through the mountains near Nazareth, near Mount Tabor, goes on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee that leads to Damascus. And then, of course, from there to Mesopotamia. There's a road that goes directly east through the valley, down to the Jordan Valley, across the Jordan to the city of Amman, Jordan, to the region, to the land of the Ammonites. So in the Bible, there was a road there. There is a road from here that goes through the valley, little valley. This is called the Valley of Dothan, next to the Palestinian city of Jenin. The Valley of Dothan that goes on top of the mountain ridge that leads toward Jerusalem, or Shechem, Hebron, and Jerusalem, of course, in that direction on the mountain ridge. And then there's a greater road. This is a small one, okay? It's a local, I'll say this, an international road that leads from here right through the main valley, the Wadi Ara Valley, and leads up onto the Highway 6, which is the Via Maris of ancient times, down to Egypt. And so the Via Maris comes from Egypt, crosses through toward Megiddo. There could be from here, from this Wadi, or from this Wadi, which comes to Yokneam, next to Yokneam. Either or, it doesn't matter, but they all come to this place. And the center of all is Megiddo, this city that has 30 layers of civilizations. You know what I mean? It's just there's a group of people living there. Somebody else comes, takes over, destroys their city, build their own city. Then somebody else comes, destroys their city, builds their own city. This is how you get the layers of archaeology of that Tel. We're talking about a place that you cannot compare to other locations because you don't have so many layers. This place has 30 layers, and some people think even more than 30 layers of civilizations with 6,000 years of history and significant prophetic events that are mentioned in the Bible that will happen with this particular place associated. So you understand, we're talking about something very, very significant. Okay, this is the picture in which we have to come near to this place called Megiddo. Right, so you understand the great intersection. So perhaps, right, we're talking about the place of gathering. I'm just comment on it, right? Imagine there are people come from the sea, from the ocean, from Tyre, Lebanon, or from even Haifa Bay. I mean, if you would get a great army, you could simply get them to Haifa, which is the biggest port almost here, in Ashdod. Haifa, a great port, and you just simply get them to the valley. You can get army that goes through from Damascus, from Syria region up. This would be a meeting point. You can have another army comes from the east, from the Arab nations, coming across the Jordan, gathering into the valley. The size of the valley, the Jezreel Valley, size of it is pretty much, it's actually the largest valley that we know of in the Middle East. With the mountains around, with that sort of topography, it's the largest valley of the Middle East. Let me go back a little bit into history before we go into archaeology, but just to give us a little understanding of this valley in the past, what was happening. So let me give you an example. Well, besides the battles of the book of Judges, okay, Barak and Deborah, they battle right here in the valley, okay, against the Midianites. Okay, same thing, Gideon against the people of the east and all of those Amalekites and these guys. They were all taking over the valley, and the valley, of course, is the source of grain, right? One of the ancient types of grain have been discovered in Jezreel Valley. That's, by the way, the meaning of the word Jezreel in Hebrew, Israel, which means the seed of God, the sowing of God. It's absolutely phenomenal. You can't go into another teaching on this. It has to do with Hosea prophecies, with Jezreel story of the city Jezreel and Ahab and Jezebel. Maybe another time. But anyway, this is very significant valley. And so whoever controls this valley, it simply controls the food supply of the northern Israel. And that's why in the book of Judges, whoever controlled the valley, all those nations, the enemies, then there was a famine in the land, because the main source of grain was taken over. Okay, and then one other thing that I have to tell you about Megiddo here, intersection, is that if you want to control, of course, strategically, Canaan, first thing when you come into this land, you would want to take over the great crossroad, which would be Megiddo. That's why Megiddo was a city that was fought mostly, all the time was fought by Egyptians, by the Assyrians, and all different people who wanted a control, okay, because it's so central. And the moment you take over Megiddo, from here, you can continue on conquering other parts of Israel. Now, what happens here? The Bible tells us that Megiddo, here's the picture, aerial photo of the Tel archaeological hill. It's pretty much excavated. Look, if this is the whole hill, it's pretty large area has been excavated. That is unique. You usually don't have more than 5-6% of the city. This one has I can't remember how many percent of the city excavated, but pretty large area, pretty large percentage of the city is excavated. Okay, and what do we know about this place? First Kings describes us that Solomon built the city as one of his main road, let's say, fortresses, or so to speak. So this reason for labor force which King Solomon raised to build the house of the Lord, his own house, the middle of the wall of Jerusalem, and then it mentions 3 cities. Chatzor. Chatzor is the city in the northern area, next the way to Tyre, Damascus. We've talked about it. It's not far from Dan, in the Hula Valley, in the valley. So the main connection of the roads between Tyre and Damascus and into Lebanon, on that main road was the city of Chatzor, and Solomon fortified it. He built it, he fortified it. There are some remains of that. So the northern intersection he's covered, then Megiddo. So from north to south, you have Chatzor in the north on the main roads. Then you have the Megiddo in the center of the main roads, and Gezer. Gezer is the city also found in the center of the intersection, highway Via Maris, which is right before going up to Jerusalem in the Ayalon Valley, in the valley of Ayalon, where Joshua fought with the kings. There was a great intersection. So Solomon understands that he's very, very smart, and he builds 3 cities on the main 3 intersections from north to south: Chatzor, Megiddo, and Gezer in the south. So he fortifies it. According to the archaeological study here, this is a model. You could see how you have the great gate, the big, very fortified gate, and then you have the city. You have a lot of different things, a wall around it, a great water system that have been dug down deep into the well, and a spring together at the same time, a well and a spring that supply city water. Very fortified city, even from the Canaanite period of time. Again, this is a drawing, a picture of some idea how the city could have looked like in the time of Solomon and Ahab, Solomon/Ahab, because Ahab also renovated the city as he was a king of the northern kingdom. So you have stables with horses, you have palace, you have all kind of public structures and houses and all of that, and the big wall around it. Here is a picture, for instance, of the entrance of the gate of Megiddo. This gate is actually dated to the time of late Canaanites. In the time of late Canaanites, we read a battle description that was found in Egypt, in the manuscripts in Egypt. That is the first in history detailed description of the battle. First ever, the oldest. It's 3,500 years old description that describes how king of Egypt, Pharaoh, by the name of Thutmose III, how he is making his journey to conquer Canaan, of course, because they want to control, right? And he comes to Canaan, and what he wants to do is to take over Megiddo first, because it's the main city. And so they come and fight Megiddo, and there's a lot of details to the battle, but they are breaking through after 7 months of siege. I mean, they're really sieging it for a couple of months before they are able to break through these fortifications that you see in this picture. This was done by the Canaanites against the these are fortifications in the time of Joshua. Joshua broke in, it was breaking through these fortifications, and Joshua conquered Megiddo. And so this is very significant and very, very strong. It's unusual. And this is 3,500 years old, original fortifications. This is, of course, wooden beams are not original, but this lower part and the floor, it's all original there. Remains of a palace, probably Ahab's palace. That's what we think. We're not sure, but the foundations of a palace, okay, that is found. A big silo that would collect a lot of grain. You can see a steps that leading down, staircase that leading down to the silo where they have gathered grain. Of course, Jezreel Valley, the main source of grain in the whole region in the Middle East. They had a lot of grain they could store for many people, and so it was just an abundance that they had. Stables for horses. This what survived. You can see that, and when you visit, it's interesting. You even read in some of the other sources of the scriptures about King Ahab, who actually brought horses. He had several hundred horses that he went up to fight with next to the region of Mesopotamia, next to Assyria there. And so he could have held his horses right in here, the stables of Ahab. Very possibly a tunnel, a shaft and a tunnel of the water channel, the water system that was there that led people down into the well, and then connected to a spring. There was a way out. You run out under the city wall for a few, I think, what is it, at least 100 meters or so out underneath the city that leads people out. All this is open for public. You can see that the dating is phenomenal. It dates from sometime from the time of the kings. Of course, it's all original, just went through preservation here and the place for people to walk through. But you can walk out of that channel is phenomenal. And of course, it's right at the entrance of the Great Valley, the Jezreel Valley, which is the most fertile valley. As I mentioned, you could see on the left-hand side, Mount Tabor. This is, by the way, a view to the northeast, Mount Tabor, the Hill of Moreh, story of Gideon happened right here. Then you have this, the valley pointing toward the mountains of Jordan, mountains of Gilead, the way to Jordan, across to Jordan. Then you have the mountains of Gilboa, the battle of the Philistines and King Saul and Jonathan who fall on these mountains. And then it continues on into the mountains of Samaria. And so you see this part of this great valley right next to you, which have been said by Napoleon in 1799. As you know, Napoleon have come and conquered Israel, and he gets a great victory here in the valley next to Mount Tabor. And Napoleon writes in his journal and that's documented. He wrote, he said, I've never seen a better place for strategic battle in my life, about this valley. Okay, and then General Allenby later on in 1919, after taking over the Ottoman Turks, he gained a great victory and being nicknamed as the Lord of Armageddon, because it happened here in the valley. There's so many battles, and all of the great battles of the ancient world, they all happen here. Of course, War of Independence. There's another wall in the Middle Ages that have been happened here, recorded. So we just have a little overview of what it was in the past. So you see how in the past and the significance of this place, how phenomenal that is, and how this opens up more of our eyes to understand, wait a minute, all of this is just history. So that sheds light so much into the future, right? And understanding, if this is what this place have seen, I mean, we probably will see something else happening. You know, some people say, what, the blood to the height of the horse's bridle, you know, there's just all kind of things about Ali. Look, before we make any estimations of the future, we have to dig a little bit deeper. This is great overview, but we got to dig a little bit deeper. What was discovered deep into in this place, in the Tel of Megiddo? Now you can see this red circle around a round structure. That's the one you can see on the right. What happened is that when archaeologists came, they decided to make an experiment that was, as I said, 100 years ago, around 100 years ago. And so they realized there's so many layers in this city. So what they decided to do, it's like a layered cake, right? So they decided to cut a piece of a cake out so they could see all the layers. And that's what was done right here. This whole section, as you see, it's this piece of a cake that was taken out, and they saw all the layers all the way down to the bedrock itself. And they counted and they found this 30-something layers. So part of what they found at the very, very, very foundation, of course, the lower you go, the older you get to the older layers. So they found this round structure and this whole area as a cultic site with this round structure that is enlarged here on the right. It is a very big altar, an altar that has a couple of steps going up to the altar. Interesting, but these steps directly point to the east. We know that ancient Canaanites would worship gods of sun and stars and all kind of stuff. So this is an ancient Canaanite altar, was used by the ancient Canaanites and late Canaanite. It's called later, or the end of the Bronze Age, right? Before the people of Israel came in, later of the Bronze Age. Anyhow, on this altar, by size, it's, by the way, the biggest altar ever found from the late Canaanite period anywhere in the world, the largest by size. On it, they found fragments of bones of animals. We understand it's an altar. We understand it's a big cultic site connected to this thing, a huge idol worshiping place, right? Part of what they found on this altar, particularly from the late Canaanite time, they found elements that led the scholars to come to conclusion that one of the procedures, ceremonies were done on this altar was something that's called reading the liver. Reading the liver. What happened in the ancient cultures, it's a common thing. They would take a liver of an animal, a liver, they would cut the liver, okay, split the liver, and they would see, according to lines and different things, it's like reading palm of the hand, right? That's exactly same idea, and they could tell the future. That's part of the witchcraft that have been found in ancient cultures. So these elements were found on this altar in particular. which led scholars to believe that here they have been reading, doing practicing this thing as reading the liver. Now, it was very significant because, first of all, the large altar ever found from that time, a huge cultic site. And they got so excited, they thought, what if we dig underneath and see, is there anything below it? And so they digged. They digged this whole area. This whole area was excavated. What they found was underneath this altar and this area was actually another area that is about 1,000 years older than this one, 1,000 years older than this one. And from that area there, they found an elements that they were blown away with and they couldn't explain. Here is one of them. It's marked with another red circle here. It's the very low section. Basically, there's nothing underneath. This is the oldest. This is sitting almost like on the bedrock. Look at the stone. It's a round, perfect circle-shaped stone with another little circle small in it. It is a basaltic rock, black basaltic rock, which is not located here. In other words, somebody had to bring this thing. It's pretty large stone. It's maybe, I don't know, 3-meter diameter or something like that, or 3.5-meter diameter. And they found several of them. They know it has to do with cultic site, and the dating of it is 1,000 years or so before that Canaanite altar, which brings us to about 5,000 or over 5,000 years ago. What is that? The problem is there is no information on this stuff. I've tried to find anything. I couldn't find anything about it. Just couldn't find it. It's just that they don't know what that is, how they were able to make this. It's a strong basaltic black rock. What kind of a technique they had 5,000 years ago to do this? What was it used for? Some kind of a cultic pagan worshiping activity. If you take this whole area, you understand that is in this whole area, they had a cultic site from about 5,000 years ago, then this is the largest ever by far, by any capacity, a cultic site in the world, the biggest and the most ancient ever. By size, the greatest. It's just, there's nothing like it to compare with. It's just phenomenal. So far, they can't compare it to anything like this. From 5,000 years ago, this big site with these elements that nobody has an answer how they actually did it. Anyway, that's very interesting. Some people say, well, could that be before flood? Could this be before by Nephilims? Absolutely, absolutely possible. Could be before the flood. Could be by Nephilim. Could be whatever. We don't know. We have no idea. But then now we can try to draw some dots together and come to some conclusion. There is one particular verse in the Bible that mentions an ancient custom of reading the liver of the animal. There is a context to that particular verse. And I will look a little bit now in the scripture, in this context. The context is in Ezekiel 21:21. Look carefully at the words that is used here. For the king of Babylon, you know, king of Babylon symbolizes Antichrist. We will look in Revelation 16 in a moment. You'll see what's happening. Stands at the parting of the road, at the fork of the two roads, to use divination. He shakes the ears, he consults the images, he looks at the liver. This particular context of Ezekiel 21, if you parallel it with several prophets about the end time battle, you understand that it fits perfectly into the book of Joel and to other ones. In fact, the next very verse, Ezekiel 21:22, it says that in his hands of the king of Babylon, he is going to Jerusalem to set a battering rams, to put a siege, to come to destroy the city. then you begin to see that this place could be meant as a place of a sign of at the place of the deepest, largest pagan worshiping site was called to be a sign for the end times, what's going to happen. Do you understand that for 700 years, this place was ruined, not mentioned in the Bible, since Assyrian captivity in the 722 BC until Revelation of John in the first century? There is 700 something years that this place is not mentioned anywhere because it is destroyed. Romans don't build here. There's no Roman layer. There's no Byzantine layer. There's no Ottoman layer. There's nothing. The latest layer was from Syria, from Assyrians, and after that, done. It's finished. There's 600, 700 years when this place is not even mentioned anywhere. Why in the world John is bringing it back again after it's dead for 700 years? I believe that this is a sign, and the assignment of this place have not yet ended. There is still a part that this place will play in the scenario. So how, first of all, let's understand here, where would be the battle? Where would be the battle? According to Joel chapter 3, if you look at Revelation 16, 17, let me open it up a little bit. I'm not going to read all of it, and you can read it later on and just understand. The location of the final battle, that's what's important. According to Joel, according to Revelation 16, 17, according to Ezekiel, let me open up Ezekiel just to read it out. I've been just saying here. The context of this is just phenomenal. So verse 22, Ezekiel 21, 22, in his right hand is the divination for Jerusalem, to set up battering rams, to call for slaughter, to lift the voice with shouting, to set battering rams against the gates, to heap up a siege mount and to mount and to build a wall. Right? So if you continue reading, it describes by Ezekiel the destruction of Nebuchadnezzar. It's true, but it has several layers. If you look at Revelation 16, now let's look at Revelation, what's happening. Understanding Revelation 16, we'll see where the final battle takes place and why. Revelation 16, I want to read to us from verse 12. The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates. Where's Euphrates? It's right in Mesopotamia, right? And its waters was dried up so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. Please highlight the word kings. Think of the word kings. Kings might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are spirits of demons, listen carefully, performing signs, which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I am coming as a thief. Blessed is he who watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Blessed is he who watches. This is for the watchmen. Verse 16, and they, who are they? The demons, right? The frogs, the spirits. Demons gathered them. Who are them? The kings of the world. The kings. We're not talking here about the multitudes, but the kings, together to a place in Hebrew called Tel Megiddo, Armageddon. This little Mount Megiddo, let me go back a little bit, one more here. This little place could not fit multitudes, but if they're all in the valley, and you see the valley is great, the kings are going right up to this place. This is where they're going up, because that's what the Bible says. They come to this site, literally. The kings will stand here. Why would they stand? I believe because of the altar, because of the significance of this thing, because of the significance of this thing. That's why they're going to get up to this particular Tel that is waiting here for hundreds of years, waiting for them, for the kings to come. What are they going to do here? Well, I believe there's going to be a false sign. I think it makes sense to me that this is going to be restored, and these demons gonna set up these false signs, and the kings of the earth will restore the altar, will predict the future, and the false signs will tell them, yes, you will win the battle. And then they begin to march, and they're marching on toward Jerusalem. If you continuing reading Revelation 16 and 17, you understand that the battle happens. The battle is against Jerusalem. Ezekiel 21 against Jerusalem. Joel 3 is all against Jerusalem. Revelation 16 and 17 is against Jerusalem. The place of the battle is the Valley of Jehoshaphat, also called Valley of Decision. David calls it the Valley of the Shadow of Death. It's the Valley of Kedron, right here. Kedron, here. Kedron, Jerusalem. This is where the battle is. This is what Zechariah says in chapter 14. That's where the battle is. Now, why do people think the battle will be in the Valley of Megiddo? The idea of Valley of Megiddo battle happens from the story of 2 Chronicles 25. 2 Chronicles 25, I've had to explain to you where do we get the idea of the final battle in that valley. It's not in the Bible. The final battle we know where. It's in Jerusalem. That the Valley of Megiddo, the Tel Megiddo, is the place of the gathering and of the false signs. That's what it is according to the text. Okay. So where do we get the Valley of Megiddo idea? You remember the story of the king of Israel and the king of Judah fighting against the people of Aramites right there. And so verse, here it is, where are we here? I think I, again, have a wrong chapter. I think I already found it earlier, but it's on. Zaya, it's not chapter 25. It's like 23, 25, something like that. Hold on. I know that's what happened to me earlier. But there is a battle, and I know you can find it better than me because I'm talking at the same time. But in 2 Chronicles, maybe it's 26, chapter 26. No, 27. It tells us a story of the death of King Josiah. King Josiah, and you can just put in chat the right place. I know I have this messed up with the chapter. It's 30 something. Hezekiah.
I think it might be chapter 35.
Josiah 34. Yeah, here it is. 30. I'm reading 34 now. 35 verses. Right. Yes, thank this. That's, I know he dies in the battle. So it's 35 verse 23. Here it is. What happened? They're battling there. And so what happens is, if we go a little bit back to verse 20. So it's 2 Chronicles 35, not 25, verse 30, verse 20. 2 Chronicles 35, verse 20. Josiah had prepared the temple after he did all this great reform, and he made all these modifications. It's a great king. People were expecting him. He was a very young boy when he was crowned, remember? And he made this amazing changes in Jerusalem and in the whole thing. What happens is that after this, Josiah had prepared the temple. Necho, king of Egypt, came up to fight against Carchemish by the Euphrates. You see, now Egyptians go all the way up to Mesopotamia. So Josiah went out against him. Josiah is like, what are you doing? In the middle of the road. He's going from Egypt, passing on the Via Maris, okay? And he's going on, he's moving, his armies of Pharaoh are going across the valley or through the Via Maris toward Syria, toward Assyria. And so he sent messengers. The Pharaoh sends messengers to Josiah and says, What have I to do with you, king of Judah? I have not come against you this day, but against the house with which I have war. For God commanded me to make haste. Refrain from meddling with God. So Pharaoh says, don't bother. This is not your battle. I'm not going against you. Don't go. You going against God, who is with me, lest he destroy you. Nevertheless, Josiah, who was proud at that time, would not turn his face from him, but he disgust himself so that he might fight with him, and did not heed the words of Necho from the mouth of God. Look at the words, amazing. So he came to fight in the Valley of Megiddo. This is the only time the phrase Valley of Megiddo even mentions in the Bible. So what happens? The archers shot King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, take me away from him. Severely wounded. His servants therefore took him out of that chariot and put in the second chariot that he had, and they brought him to Jerusalem, and he dies in Jerusalem, and he is buried. He dies in that Valley of Megiddo because of that battle. This is where he is being shot, and the hope of Israel for the word, for the King Josiah. His name means Yeoshiyahu, God will redeem. God is the Redeemer. It's an image of Messiah, the one who's going to redeem God. And they saw how he's young boy, how he's making this great shift of this reform, political, religious reform, of different modifications of reforms the altar, and he purifies the temple, and he gets rid of all the idols. And so they're saying, this is the Messiah, this is the one. But he goes and he dies in the valley in battle. And Zechariah chapter 12, Zechariah is specifically relating to that story, okay, of Josiah's death. Verse 11, he says, the mourning for the pierced one, right? We know this prophecy of Messiah, but he's using this, and he says that there's going to be mourning and grieving for the one, for the Messiah, right? As verse 11, there shall be a great mourning in Jerusalem, like the mourning of Hadad Rimon in the plain of Megiddo, of the Valley of Megiddo. There's going, because of the battle and death of Josiah, people were weeping in Jerusalem when he died, and that is kind of a weeping that will be when they realize whom they have pierced. This is the only reason how Christian world have taken this idea of Valley of Megiddo and turned it into the final battle location. It never been this way. Now you can see where this all coming from. That's all that is there. I haven't read Joel 3, but you could fill it up later on, you know, and kind of get it better in your in this perspective of the scriptures. But if you read, you see where is going to be the battle. So what is the scenario, how this could be? That's what text helps me to understand. Here's the valley. Number one, gathering of the kings of the earth. This is according to the text. This is a center of the crossroads. This is the best place to gather the armies. The kings are going up to restore the altar. This is why the king is going to be on the Tel itself, according to Revelation. On the Tel, not around, not in the valley, but on the Tel, on the hill, on top of it. There is a significance on it. They will receive the false sign of the demons, and the false sign will say, go and take Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is, you know, it's the heart. And so they're going to go and try to get Jerusalem because they receive the false sign. And then they begin to march against Jerusalem. 4 and 5, glorious return of Yeshua. This is the possible scenario according to what I've just described, what the archaeology and the geography tells us. And so it's definitely possible to present this. So this is touring Megiddo is absolutely amazing, because you really see these things with your own eyes. You're walking on these places, and you really feeling this. So I pray that you were able to benefit from this, and I'd love to get some questions so we could relate. Yes. There is, here it is, somebody commented that the Battle of Revelation 20, the Battle of Revelation 20, what we call the Gog and Magog, it is a problematic here in terms of the timeline. You have a battle before the return of Yeshua, and you have a battle after a millennium kingdom. After the millennium kingdom, the Satan is released, and it's going to bring all of them for battle again. It will be again against Jerusalem, and again it's going to be the end. So whether Ezekiel speaks on Revelation 20 or not, and the way I understand the scripture is Ezekiel is not speaking about Revelation 20, but it speaks about Revelation 16, 17, that time of the second coming of Yeshua, not the post-millennium battle. That's the way I understand it in comparison to other prophets in this big scenario. So I would leave the Revelation 20 to let's figure out in the millennium. Okay, we don't need to figure out it right now. If we can figure out a little bit of what's going to happen or how things can happen, at least, that could be in our lifetime or in the lifetime of our kids, grandkids, or somewhere close by, right? Then this would be that would be beneficial. Then, and after that, I have no idea. By the way, I don't have all the answers, but I'm just suggesting some idea about the way the text tells us, what the text tells us and what the text doesn't tell us. And we have to be careful of making things that are not in the text. So let's rely on the text and see how that comes into the picture. Right. Questions, please.
Hi, Andre, thank you so much. I was thinking about all the battles in Daniel. Do they all line up with this? Where they go
Absolutely.
up from the kings of the south? How does that all relate?
Well, it's not, we can't go into this right now because it's a big thing, but it does. If you parallel Daniel with other prophets and read all of them, all of these descriptions, then with all the information you got about the crossroads and the Megiddo as being a crossroad, then that perhaps will help us to understand. I'm not really ever made a study on Daniel's battles to compare it with this. I might do this, but I'm aware of this, what you're saying. So I'm just, I suppose
Thank you.
that it fits into the story.
Thank you.
Maybe it will be good for you to read the Mid-East piece of Joel Richardson that we did study with.
I don't know. I'm aware of some of the books and the end time things. I'm not trying to figure out.
לא בשבילך, בשביל האישה, התכוונתי.
Okay. Yes, again, the point, I'm just want to clarify something, that what I brought to you now is an explanation, or at least my point of view on the text, how this sheds light. Now, it's not about figuring out the timing. It's not about figuring out all the detail, but it is to have a perspective and to have an eyes to see and ears to hear, so we could watch and pray. We could put our direction of prayer in a strategic way, and we will understand better about the ways how the people operate in the ancient world. And so then you can take it however you feel the Lord is leading you in this. Somebody asked about a sense of the 10-nation confederation forming. No, look, there's so much stuff forming. I mean, there's just so much, and I've, trust me, I've watched so many things about different events of what's happening right now and how things going to happen, and the kings and parallel to Daniel. And honestly, at some point, I was tired of this, because I think that if we're just so much input to so much effort to figure out what's going on, we sometimes lose the focus. Instead of we're looking at how do we interpret what's going on, instead of looking up to God and asking him, or tell me what to do. So I think that, yes, we can look what's going on, we can see about the whole thing, and there are different points of view and different movements about the end times. It's good to look, to observe, it's fine, but let's not have our focus on these things, but have the focus on the Lord. Otherwise we can really get messed up. Okay. Somebody asks, when you mentioned Nephilim among the, who are these? You mentioned possibly the rest. No, I'm talking about the Nephilim, which is the giants, so those who were, from before the flood, from pre-flood, giants from pre-flood that had a lot of, I guess, power. And so there are definitely altars from that time frame, which is, according to archaeologists, over 5,000 years ago. And so there are different things, like some people say, like pyramids, like some other places. And so maybe that even that old, and maybe Megiddo was a cultic site. Maybe it was a place of really the events back then, even then. Okay, so that's what I can could tell you. Anything to do with the sacrifice of desolation? I don't know. I've big altar, biggest altar in Megiddo. I don't know. I really don't know. What do you mean by sacrifice of desolation? And how does this? I really don't. Sorry.
Oh, it will be in the temple. That will in Revelation and in Daniel. It's not in Megiddo.
Going through some questions. No, Ezekiel 21:21. That should be in your Bible, about the king of Babylon that comes to attack Jerusalem. And he is, if you look at this, and maybe there's a difference in your Bible and in German, but look around there. It should be correct. Okay. Great. Any other questions? I don't know if I missed anything here.
Andre, I just want to say that from our perspective in England, we just don't have teaching like this, and I just feel, well, I just think, wow, I feel what you've done is authenticate so many important things, and I just think there's a lot of stuff going on in the West about the end times and all this and that, but I just think we need to be really clear how to go forward from here, and what the Lord is calling us to do. And I feel one of the most important things that's come out of your study is that the urgency to support the land and to support Israel, to support the Jewish people. And I feel really on fire with that, and the whole thing with the Assyrian highway. And I just hope that we can, somehow go forward with this wonderful teaching, because I just feel I've only started now.
Well, Jamie,
Yeah, it does take
some discussions
after a couple of days. After a couple of days of touring, even on the real tour, then by the end you finally begin to put things together, and you feel like, okay, now I'm finally getting into this whole thing, and by now the tour is over. So it's kind of a similar sense we're having at the moment. But we'll pray and see what God wants to do, and what the Lord wants you to do with all of these, and what he wants, because I believe this is equipping watchmen. This was done in the heart with equipment for what you guys are doing, what the Lord, whatever God positioned you, the place he positioned you, the vision he gave you, this is helping, giving you some more tools, how to pray, how to see prophetically, and keep asking the Lord. You know, we have to search for the Lord here and ask him, okay, God, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to put myself in what you're doing? That's, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, Andre, we're going to have some discussions with you.
We need more of it.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to just clarify, is the valley and the Jezreel Valley and the Tel of Megiddo, that was the one where the kings would come to that occult altar, then they'd go on to the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which is like the Kedron Valley in Jerusalem. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Thank you.
Tel of Megiddo, it's the gathering place, the place of the
Yes.
sign, and then they march from there to the Valley of Jehoshaphat in Jerusalem, Kedron, and there the battle is.
Thank you.
Somebody asked here about the control of Megiddo. Somebody, how can we control Megiddo and the spirit? Look, we don't. Just leave it alone. Leave it alone. It's there for a sign. It's static. It's just leave it alone. I mean, don't get into. I mean, you don't want to mess up with Revelation 16. I mean, just God said it's going to be used for something. Just leave it alone. Okay, we had some prophetic people had particular visions about it. They've asked the Lord, and the Lord said, just leave it alone. It is there. It's significant. It's important, but not for now. So now you can come and tour and visit and just be aware, and then see how God is going to lead you on the day when we will have to pray through these events if we live to this.
Thank you. One other question. You know the Isaiah 19 highway that goes up through from Egypt, Israel, Assyria? Is that actually through this access that you're talking about?
Absolutely, absolutely. There is a split of the road. One, it's called the Via Regis, which is the highway of the king, the east side of the Jordan, and the second section is right through the Jezreel Valley. So yes, I'm not sure that this particular detail of how does the highway go through Israel is actually how this plays into the bigger picture of Egypt, Assyria, and Israel. I don't have an understanding of this. I see this more of a global idea of a connection of the countries rather than a particular path, you know, or certain cities on the road. Maybe there is, maybe, I really don't know.
Thank you.
Somebody asked about, tell more about the sign you spoke about to happen in Megiddo. What I see, I mean, what I just suggest, okay, I'm not saying for sure, I'm suggesting that because that altar in Megiddo had a past experiences of foretelling future, I suppose that there will be some kind of a evil sign that these evil spirits will perform. They're performing signs. And so they will perform some kind of a sign, maybe again, reading the liver, maybe foretelling the future, you know, in different way, but it will be a place where they will receive a sign that their battle is going to get victory. They're going to have victory. And so that is the sign that's going to happen. I think so. That's the way I understand this, but I could be wrong as well.
Thank you.
Somebody asks about show Valley of Jehoshaphat in relation physically to Megiddo. I've mentioned to you that the road that goes on the mountains, that goes on the Valley of Dothan, and then straight on the mountains to the south, that's the journey to Jerusalem. And so this is probably going to be the road through which the battle will take place until they get to Jerusalem from the north, of course. From the north, they will surround Jerusalem. Same thing happened in 2,000 years ago in the year 67 AD when the Romans came. Exactly same path. They haven't marched necessarily on the mountains, but on the sides, on the valleys. It doesn't matter really. What matters is that they really get to that valley, the Valley of Decision, Valley of Jehoshaphat, and there is the attack on Jerusalem from.
Andre, it's not something. Is it the area with the יעל וסיסרא? שמה זה היה באזור הזה שם?
Absolutely, I've mentioned, yes, the Battle of Barak and Deborah happened right in the valley as well. I mean, it's just all there.
Are there any other questions for Andre? Andre, thank you so much. We just honor you for your gifting and for your willingness to reach out to us. Just for this has been phenomenal. I think we're all deeply blessed by it, and we do need time to ponder what we have heard, to look over the sessions, and to just sit on this for let it soak in. And so tomorrow on Friday, 3 p.m. Jerusalem time, there will be a Psalms Worldwide Watch. Mary Chandler's leading that they will be praying over Israel using the Psalms and going over these sessions this week. Also, next week, we're going to go back to our morning and evening times with the Global Watch. Remember that we are redigging a rhythm of heaven that is in throughout the scriptures. Everybody's been rushing towards 24/7, which is fine. But actually, morning and evening is emphasized throughout scriptures. And we will be back to that session on Monday at 6 a.m. Jerusalem time. That's the break of dawn prayer. And 3 p.m., which is the evening sacrifice time. That Monday, the first Monday of the month is, or the first Monday of the week is, quote unquote, our journey time. And Andre will be talking to you about that, our equipping time for the watchmen. And I did want to let you know that we've been praying about what's next for the journey group and what's really happening on the scenes of the nations. And I keep going back to the fact that we are entering into a season where it's going to start intensifying. And the fact that the church, by and large, is not engaged with corporate prayer and prayer. And the great falling away is before our eyes. And in fact, it is probably happening now, and we don't even see it. And so what we are going to do is spend the 10 sessions coming ahead going through the book Unleashed that we just released. It's based on a lot of research going into the culture of the church today and how God is calling us back to be that house of prayer first and foremost. Why? Because I'm very concerned about what's happening, and that we be as watchmen. This is a watchman word, Ezekiel 33:3 word, that when you see a sword coming upon the land and don't do anything, it's going to be on our heads. But we are going to be equipped and talk about strategies on how to approach people, our friends, our families, our congregations, local congregations, on getting back into the habit of corporate prayer. And because there's a key in it for the end times. And so I invite everybody back on Sunday. We will be discussing, having time to regurgitate all that we learned, to kind of solidify what we've learned over these last 11 days with Andre, and then prepare ourselves for a journey getting ourselves established on the message to the church at this hour. And Andre, we'll be in contact with you, because I really would love to see more sessions ahead, teaching on these critical principles. In fact, the end time things that we've been through in the teachings, a lot of what you just spoke really solidified much of what we've been learning. And again, this is not to, the more we understand the biblical foundations of this, the less we're going to get caught up into secular narratives and things that are not necessarily things we should be buying time on or spending our energies in. So anyway, that's coming up Sunday. Tomorrow, remember, 3 p.m. the same time as this.
You mean
will be the
Monday
world-
Israel or Sunday America?
Please, Esther, this time, 3 p.m. Jerusalem time will be the Worldwide Watch. 5 p.m. we will have an international Shabbat, and I don't know if Carolyn is on the. She was. Are you on? Yeah, Carolyn. Carolyn is going to be leading us. Do you want to say anything, Carolyn?
I just want to say כל הכבוד לאנדרי, ממש נהניתי מאוד.
כיף לראות אותך.
ותמשיך. And blessings to you all. I look forward to being with you tomorrow. I've been watching it on the videos afterwards. But wow, amazing. Thank you, Sue and Fred, for hosting. My
Well,
friend, Andre.
it's been an honor, and Andre, we can't thank you enough. And we know that this is just a door that's opening, and believe that God and trust God that He's going to take us through for more establishing of God's word in our hearts. So we will be tomorrow again. We'll just be having the afternoon session with the Worldwide Watch, 5 p.m. the International Shabbat. And certainly invite you all to come to that. That's been a powerful thing. We've been moving into those biblical rest patterns, which are important for us to follow. But then starting Monday, we'll go back to the morning, evening again, and be moving forward. Okay. God bless you guys. Let's unmute Andre.
Bless you guys. Thank you so much.
Blessings. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, Andre.
Bless you all.
Wonderful day.
Blessings upon you all.
Bless you, Lord.
Bless you all.
Andre.
Hallelujah. Thank you for the knowledge. Holy Spirit, give us the wisdom to apply this. In the name of Yahweh.